Welcome, everyone. My name is Rich Shortall. I'm the Executive Officer for Fire Safe Marin. We are now in one of our workshops, and the purpose of the workshops is to give the agencies in each of the 5 major zones of the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority an opportunity to talk about the work that they've been doing the last year. It's pretty exciting stuff. Today we have Battalion Chief Todd Lando from the Central Marin Fire Department, who's going to tell us what they've been up to. Todd, welcome.
Thanks for the invite, Rich. Yeah, so I've got a handful of slides to share. I'm going to put these on the screen and talk about some of the projects and some of the accomplishments in the MWPA Central Zone for really since 2022 and extending into the next budget year, so we can discuss what we've got planned for the future. I think it's important for us to just understand what the Central Zone is. When we look at the MWPA, it's the most complex of all of the zones, politically speaking. It incorporates 4 different fire agencies, really 5 if we talk about Sleepy Hollow Fire District, in a variety of towns and special districts that compose those fire agencies. So politically, the structure of the Central Zone is a little more complex than, say, San Rafael, where all of the tax dollars are from the city of San Rafael, or Novato, where it's the fire taxing authority is simply the Novato Fire District. So there's only one agency to contend with. So we're dealing with the city of Larkspur, town of Corte Madera, unincorporated Kenfield and Greenbrae, Fairfax, Ross, San Anselmo, Sleepy Hollow, and then all of the unincorporated county service areas as well, represented by Marin County Fire Department. That said, we recognized that complexity early on, and we developed a strong partnership among those agencies, and we work together really seamlessly and fluidly to plan and implement these projects. I think it's important, and it's a model for really partnering in fire service and political zones like this. So for the 2023 to 2024 Central Zone, our program funding looks essentially like this. And it's divvied up the same way other agencies or other zones are within the MWPA. But because we have so many agencies contributing, the dollar amounts are worth noting. It's significant acreage. It's a significant percentage of the entire county, and we've got about $4.6 million total in revenue coming in from the tax measure C. 20% of that, about $920,000 or so, is dedicated to space. The other 20% per the tax measure is dedicated to local projects that are administered by the individual agencies. And then 60%, or about $2.7 million, is allocated to the core funding programs of the MWPA. I'm not going to get into too much detail on what that means, but it's worth understanding and looking at the MWPA structure for people who may not understand how the funds are divvied. For the Central Zone, those core projects add up to a little more than that dollar amount I just showed you, and I'll explain why. So for the 2023-24 Central Zone, we've allocated about $500,000 to evac routes. That includes some carryover funding that was unspent in a prior budget year. We've allocated about $75,000 to the Ridgewood Eucalyptus Removal Project that we're conducting in conjunction with the city of San Rafael. About $1.1 million will be spent on our Defensible Space Evaluation Program. That includes funds from both the Corps and from local funding from Measure C. And then we'll spend about $3.1 million on the Greater Ross Valley Shaded Fuel Break. And that includes funding both from the MWPA Corps that's been allocated by the Central Zone agencies, and also several million dollars from a CAL FIRE Fire Prevention Fund grant. I want to talk about our flagship program. This is our Defensible Space Inspection Program, because it really it has ties to every other area that we do work on wildfire mitigation in the Central Zone. It's our flagship. It's one that we're really proud of, and it continues to grow, and it's become a model both statewide and nationally for defensible space inspection and evaluation programs. New for this year in 2023, we formed what we're loosely referring to as the Alliance, the Defensible Space Alliance for Marin. This is now 5 agencies. We added an agency this year. So Kentfield Fire District, Central Marin Fire Department, Marin County Fire, Ross Valley Fire Department, and new for 2023, we've joined forces with the Southern Marin Fire District. And we're conducting inspections jointly with the Central Marin Zone of the MWPA, the West Marin Zone, and the Southern Zone. So 3 out of the 5 zones in the MWPA participate fully with this alliance for defensible space evaluations and inspections in their entire jurisdiction.
Todd, can I interrupt you just for
Sure.
1 second? Are you trying to advance the slides? Because they're not advancing.
I am advancing the slides. Yeah.
They're not showing on the screen. We might want to start this over.
Oh,
We're just seeing the one, the cover slide.
Interesting. I've been advancing through the whole thing. Yeah.
Oh,
Do we want to start it over?
I think we need to, yeah. I figured Jen caught it. I was sitting here daydreaming.
Interesting. Okay. So I'm scrolling through slides right now. You don't see it that happen?
The slides are not even,
Stop sharing. Yeah.
they're not even on the share, no.
Okay, let me start recording. Okay, so I'm going to introduce the MWPA Central Zone and the projects that we've worked on since 2022 through the 2024 fiscal year. So we'll talk a little bit about projects that we have planned and will be implementing in the future. It's important to understand that the MWPA Central Zone includes several fire agencies and quite a few local jurisdictions, Kentfield Fire District, Central Marin Fire Department, Ross Valley Fire Department, and Marin County Fire Department. And it shows the complexity of the Central Zone, which is different than some of the other zones in the MWPA. We have, a much broader political body that we represent, and this could have introduced some difficulties in managing complex projects and planning projects, but we recognized early on the importance of working together. We developed strong partnerships, and we've developed a streamlined approach to implementing and proposing projects within the MWPA that we think has been a fantastic tool for us to get projects done efficiently. So working with the city of Larkspur, town of Corte Madera, town of Fairfax, Ross, San Anselmo, Sleepy Hollow Fire Protection District, and the unincorporated county service areas, as well as unincorporated Kentfield and Greenbrae, with all of those fire agencies. Much more complex than some of the other centrals or zones within the MWPA, such as the Novato, for example, where there's one political body, the Novato Fire District, that implements projects within that entire boundary. I think it's helpful for folks to understand how it works here and why it's a little more complicated in the central area. For 2023 and 2024, we've allocated funding based on the revenue that's anticipated from tax measure C. We're anticipating about $4.6 million in revenue. That'll be divvied up the way the tax measure requires, which is that 20% goes to defensible space projects administered locally. 20% goes to local hazard mitigation projects administered by each of the individual agencies, and then 60% is dedicated to the core projects within the MWPA. And it's worth folks digging in a little bit and understanding what the core projects mean if you haven't heard of that before. Within the core projects for the 23-24 fiscal year, I think it's important to understand that we're supplementing some of these projects with local funds and outside funds. So we'll be spending about $4.8 million on core projects, which is more than the total revenue for the entire central zone. But I'll explain why. We're spending about $75,000 on the Ridgewood eucalyptus removal project, about $1.1 million on the defensible space evaluation program, $500,000 on evacuation routes. That includes some carryover funds that were unspent in the prior budget year, and the Greater Ross Valley Shaded Fuel Break, which will exceed $3 million in expenditures this year. And that includes about $1 million of funding from the tax measure C, and probably close to $2 million of funding from a CAL FIRE fire prevention grant that we were awarded 2 years ago. I'm going to focus on our flagship program, the Defensible Space Inspection Program, because this is the one that has the most reach in the community. It has its fingers in all of our mitigation projects. We really believe that this is the most successful program that we run and the one that will have the most impact when a major wildfire hits the central zone. So new for 2023, we formed an alliance of fire agencies. We've been working together with 4 agencies, the Kentfield Fire District, Central Marin, Marin County, and Ross Valley since 2019, since really the inception of the MWPA. But for 2023, we've joined forces with the Southern Marin Fire District in the Southern MWPA zone. So now our defensible space evaluation program spans 3 of the 5 MWPA zones, the West Zone, the Central Zone, and the Southern Zone. So, really about 60% of the inspections in the MWPA service areas are going to be conducted by this alliance. Our alliance consists of 33 inspectors. That includes 3 full-time year-round staff and about 30 seasonal defensible space inspectors. We really conduct inspections for 14 different fire agencies. That includes agencies like the Muir Woods Community Services District, Inverness Public Utilities District, Stinson Beach and Bolinas Fire Districts, and then all of the other fire agencies that we mentioned before. So this is a big operation. We've moved to a new command center operating out of the Los Gamos Public Safety Building in San Rafael. We've set up a state-of-the-art command center to offer customer service, phone calls during the business day from community members who have questions about their defensible space inspections, to help us maintain command and control over our inspectors. We can see real-time locations of the inspectors, real-time statistics on the data that's being collected, and manage a really complicated program out of a fantastic new central state-of-the-art workspace. We operate a fleet of 11 electric and hybrid vehicles. We felt that these vehicles really match the MWPA's goal of operating in the most environmentally sustainable way possible. So we operate a fleet of electric Chevy Bolt vehicles and hybrid Toyota Highlander vehicles, extremely efficient. And the new location we operate out of in San Rafael offers us charging stations for all of our vehicles. In 2022, this gives you an idea of what our program is capable of. Remember, in 2022, we were not inspecting the Southern Zone yet, so these numbers will change pretty dramatically for the coming year. But we conducted 13,688 initial first inspections. We conducted 3,700 high-priority re-inspections as part of a pilot program to see whether follow-up inspections would improve the efficiency and the outcomes of our defensible space inspections, whether we would get better results. We identified 144,000 hazardous issues on properties in the Central Zone, and we conducted 288 voluntary abatements as a result of identified hazards that this program found during the inspection process. So that's a total of 17,000 inspections completed, over 17,000 in the Central and West zones, with 26 inspectors in 2022. We anticipate those numbers increasing dramatically this year as we brought on more inspectors, a larger zone, and improved efficiencies in the organization itself. We want the community to really understand that we piloted, that we've launched, and are now actively using a custom data collection and resident report software. Most residents in the Central Zone have probably already seen one of our reports, but this was a valuable tool to us that did not exist when the MWPA was launched. Our program recognized the need for this and worked with local software developers to come up with a state-of-the-art data collection tool that would help us identify hazards in the field and then communicate really efficiently with the residents what the hazards are that we found on their properties and how they might fix them. This software is now being used all over the Western United States. That's part of the MWPA's mission, is to share the tools that we develop locally. And it provides us tremendous feedback from other agencies like Truckee, Colorado, the state of Montana, and Southern California and other Bay Area fire agencies that are now actively using the software that we developed for this program. As part of that, the data gathering, the inspections itself, and the software that we use, we've developed a pilot program that we're launching this year. In fact, it's just launched in the last 2 weeks. And this is an automated personalized email and mail reminder system that's integrated into our defensible space inspections. So this means that residents will receive automated emails and even postal mailings, postcards and letters from the fire agencies explaining the hazards that we found, explaining how to access their online reports, providing, in some cases, prioritized lists, summarized lists of the top priority items that ought to be fixed to improve defensible space on properties, and then leading people to the interactive defensible space report, and hopefully triggering a greater and more comprehensive actions by the residents at each of these properties that we inspect. As part of our program this year, I mentioned that we're conducting re-inspections. So this ties in. We'll be sending out personalized reminders to residents that they have to complete this work. Some of it is required by law. And then we'll be following up to see what actually gets done, and we'll be analyzing the data and hopefully finding that the multifaceted approach we take to educate people results in better outcomes for the community. We'll be able to measure the improved defensible space compliance if this program works as we anticipate. So we're really looking forward to seeing the results, and hopefully the next time we do one of these workshops, I'll be able to provide you with some information about that. We also work on a variety of vegetation management programs in the Central Zone. I'm going to cover these briefly with some before and after photos that I think highlight the work that we're conducting. We're working on a variety of shaded fuel breaks. This is an example of a shaded fuel break and invasive plant control program that we've been working on in the community of Larkspur. This is part of the Greater Ross Valley shaded fuel breaks, and it's also part of an acacia eradication program that we've worked on in partnership with Marin County Parks and Open Space. This is in the Citron Bowl open space area. This is a multi-year project, and we have crews in that area even today working to continue to suppress the regrowth in acacias that are a non-native fire hazardous species that had overtaken this open space at preserve. Another example of shaded fuel break work we're doing in the community of Larkspur. This is in the Palm Hill neighborhood. This is a multi-year project to reduce dead and down vegetation and reduce French broom, which had overtaken some open space parcels adjacent to and downslope from a vulnerable wildland urban interface community. We have other examples of projects like this. These are fantastic before and after photos that really show that the results that you can get with targeted work, reducing dead and down vegetation, limbing up the understory underneath native vegetation, retaining the native trees and preserving the native canopy to keep shade on the ground, which reduces regrowth and increases fuel moisture and ground moisture, reduces fire intensity. It's really something that accomplishes all of the goals that we look for in wildfire mitigation. This is an example of another piece of shaded fuel break in the Greater Ross Valley shaded fuel break at the top of Christmas Tree Hill in Corte Madera. This is a place that the MWPA will be taking a group of local elected officials tomorrow on a tour to see the results of several $100,000 in more than 2 years of work that we've conducted. Other examples showing work that we've done alongside an evacuation route and creating defensible space for a critical communications facility, also near Christmas Tree Hill in Corte Madera as part of that shaded fuel break. And then importantly, the vegetation management work we're undertaking on evacuation routes throughout the entire Ross Valley. This is a photograph. The before photo on the left is a fire engine that's actually responding to an emergency, was unable to access down this road. You can see a tremendous amount of non-native invasive vegetation and ornamental vegetation that had overtaken the entire roadway, impeding fire engine access. We restored the native landscape, native vegetation, removed the non-natives, and have returned several times to offer maintenance treatment to reduce the regrowth of things like French broom and Spanish broom that had overtaken this area and reduce the likelihood that a fire would impact the roadway. The last piece I'm going to talk about before wrapping up is our big core project. This is the Greater Ross Valley Shaded Fuel Break that I alluded to. We've talked about this in multiple meetings before. We are well underway on this project right now. We've completed the first year. We expended over $3 million in the first year. It's turning out to be an expensive project. The cost of contractors, the cost of fuel and equipment have all gone up dramatically in the last couple of years. So the project is now looking like it's probably going to be a $6 to $9 million completion. This is a 38-mile long shaded fuel break that encircles the entire central zone. And to date, in the first year, we've completed about 11 miles of this shaded fuel break from San Anselmo at the Cedars, really at Red Hill in San Anselmo, all the way through Sleepy Hollow, around White's Hill, and now we're working back through the Bothene Canyon in Fairfax and approaching Cascade Canyon in Fairfax. Tremendously valuable project. It's part of our overall strategy with the MWPA of reducing fire intensity when it reaches communities, enhancing defensible space that's required by the residents, and providing safe working spaces for firefighters during a wildfire and safe evacuation for the residents at the periphery of the community. This is going to cover 1,100 acres when it's completed. It will touch about 1,700 parcels, and we anticipate completing this in 2026, at which point we recognize we'll never really truly be done, and we'll be moving into more of a maintenance phase. This year, in the second year of the project, we'll see it focusing on central and southern Marin, or central and southern Ross Valley communities, such as Kentfield, Ross, San Anselmo, and parts of Larkspur and Corte Madera. And I just want to wrap up with a look at, I think this map helps folks understand what the intent of this project is. This is a 200 to 300 foot buffer behind residences at the periphery of the community, where the edge of the built environment meets the wild, unmanaged open spaces where we expect wildfires to develop and burn towards the community. When the wildfire reaches the fuel break at the edge of the community, it will not stop. Our intent is not that this is going to stop a fire, which would require the removal of all vegetation, but this will reduce the intensity. It'll reduce the height of flames when they approach the community, and it'll reduce the intensity and the amount of heat that's transferred to structures at the edge of the community, hopefully giving that defensible space work that residents do a fighting chance at protecting their homes, and giving firefighters a chance to protect and save homes. We think that this in conjunction with our defensible space program will be the most meaningful work that we do in the life of the MWPA. Hope that's helpful. It's a quick wrap up on a variety of approaches that we're taking in the central zone. And I really want to emphasize to folks that the fire agencies all have representatives working on MWPA projects. They can reach out to me or my colleagues with the other fire agencies. We love to talk about this. We'd like to have conversations with the community and help them understand the work we're doing and the value of this. And we want people to understand that their tax dollars are really hitting the ground hard and making a significant impact already.
Well, that's great, Todd. That's just a wonderful presentation. Just clarifying, would any of this been possible without the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority?
Absolutely not. If there's one overarching thing here, the work that we're doing is expensive, and we had no funding source to do any of this type of work in the past. So virtually everything we're doing right now, is new work that was never undertaken before, and almost exclusively because we just didn't have the funds to do it. Fire agencies are tasked with responding to emergencies and answering 911 calls, and every budget dollar that a fire agency receives goes directly to emergency response. There was virtually no money for this type of mitigation work, and we left a lot of this work untouched. That this is we're 50 to 100 years of deferred maintenance in places that we're catching up on right now.
Well, congrats to Marin residents for stepping up and supporting this. And then, of course, I personally think the MWPA's done a great job making all these projects come together, because they really come sort of from the ground up. Local fire agencies and whatnot know what needs to be done. They get proposed. There's a great system to make all this happen, and you end up with something like these fuel breaks. I think one thing that you explained very well, but just to reiterate, a lot of times when people hear us talking about a shaded fuel break, somehow they think it's out in what a lot of people think of as the hinterland. But in fact, these are pretty close to residents.
Yeah, the shaded fuel break work that we do is immediately adjacent to residents. In fact, we never work more than 300 feet from residents on the shaded fuel break itself. And that's because that's really the place where we need to regulate wildfire activity. And that there's a big gap in understanding, I think, in the community about this. We believe that we know that wildfires are going to occur in the wild areas of Marin, and they are going to be potentially very high intensity wildfires. And in a lot of cases, that's okay. Our goal is to protect people and protect the infrastructure and the homes themselves. So as long as we mitigate the wildfire intensity closest to homes, we think that we'll be able to protect the communities.
So with that said, one, if you're a taxpayer, you can see this work being done right behind your home, so to speak. And at the same time, what's the responsibility from residents? You're not actually in people's backyards per se, right?
For the most part, we're not in people's backyards. Some of this work is occurring on private property. We're typically doing work that's not required to be done by the Public Resources Code or the Fire Code. So we're working on deferred maintenance on wildlands primarily. That said, there are places where some of the work encroaches directly into somebody's defensible space zone. In those cases, we contact the residents. If we're doing work that they should have been doing all along, we only undertake that when it's going to benefit a large number of adjacent homes, and when it's work that we feel is unlikely to have been completed otherwise. In some cases, this is what we consider a voluntary abatement, and we let residents know that this is a one-time offering. We're helping them catch up on deferred maintenance, and that the long-term maintenance is the responsibility of the homeowner.
And so once again, I have my backyard. I still need to maintain that to make all of this work really well, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, without defensible space immediately around the homes, without the homeowners' work, none of this works. That's why our defensible space inspection program integrates so well with this work. We focus those inspections at the periphery of the community, right up against the shaded fuel break. We make sure those homeowners do their work. We follow up with them. We put pressure on them to get the work done. Gentle pressure. We provide a lot of hand-holding and a lot of advice. And we're getting great results. We're seeing, about 80% of the residents that we contact are doing some of the work that we ask, not all of the work in most cases. So we have a lot of room for improvement, but we are seeing results right now that will make a meaningful impact when there's a fire.
So I am a big fan of the Defensible Space Program, but how detailed is the Defensible Space report that you get?
Incredibly detailed. In fact, some of the feedback we get is that they're too detailed. They can be overwhelming to residents. So we're working on different approaches to provide information in easier to manage chunks. But we believe that it's best for us to be absolutely transparent and honest with residents. Marin County, when we do our inspections statewide, we find we have the lowest compliance with defensible space statewide. And I don't think that that's, speaking poorly about our community's ability to upkeep their homes. I think what that's really telling us is we're being more honest as fire agencies with residents in Marin about what the vulnerabilities are in their homes. We find virtually no properties in Marin County that we consider to be 100% compliant with the fire code. We can find issues just about on every property, and we think it's important to communicate that. We want people to understand where their vulnerabilities are, and we want them to understand how to fix it. That means that some of these properties have a really lengthy list of things that they need to clean up, both to meet the minimum standards that required by the fire code, but also, some things that aren't required by the fire code can make you really vulnerable. And we share that information with people along with details, especially with Fire Safe Marin, on how to fix those things.
Is there any help available for people who need to get all this work done? Financial help in particular?
Yeah, absolutely. In the central zone, we focus quite a bit of attention on our voluntary abatement program. That's work that we do with the fire agencies, directly using MWPA funds to tackle bigger issues that we find on properties that many homeowners might not be able to afford, or just may not have the wherewithal to plan and execute a big, complicated project. That said, there's also the grant program that can provide some funding, some financial assistance to residents in need. The MWPA grant program, administered by the MWPA itself, is tied to this defensible space inspection program. So once you receive a report, if an item that we find, an issue that we find on a property is eligible for grant funds, there will be a button on the online report that allows you to, in one click, apply for a grant to help mitigate the cost.
So you get your home evaluated, you get a detailed report to show you everything that needs to be done. On that report, there's a button that can provide the financial or help steer you in the direction of financial assistance might be there. And then if your property happens to abut these large fuel breaks, and all work is being done out there and whatnot. So pretty exciting stuff in Marin County here, I think.
I think so. Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Well, Todd, do you have anything else that you want to add? That was a great presentation. And by the way, the before and after pictures, I'm sure everybody realized that shows why the work is being done. You don't need to be a wildfire expert to say, holy cow, what an improvement of the property there.
Yeah, they're great illustrations, and I think they help people understand, looking at their own property, what might need to be done. So we're proud of those photos, and we've got a library now of thousands of them that we never had before because of the amount of work that's happening. I think it's really important for Marin residents to understand how far in the forefront we are with this type of mitigation work. When MWPA tax measure C passed in 2020, there was no other organization like this in the country. Several other counties and local jurisdictions are following our lead now, introducing similar tax measures and similar approaches to this, because we've been able to show results already in Marin. I think we're a model, and we have been for over a century here in Marin, and hopefully that continues to pay dividends in reducing wildfire loss here.
Well, good news for Marin residents, and thanks to the residents for supporting Measure C. Thanks to the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority for making all this happen. And then thank you for all the wildfire professionals like yourself for getting all this done. So Todd, appreciate it very much. Look forward to hearing next year's update. All right.
Thanks, Rich.
All right. Take care now.
All right. Bye-bye.